Is there settings for?
There is a settings. Yeah.
Okay, we are actually live, so I'm gonna share the link to everyone. I think we can start the viewers as well. I'm not sure if you guys can look at it. But we just got almost 60 people in a minute, which is a good number, and I will be sharing it with Avail community.
Typing away. If you want to share the link to the tweet too in this chat or whatever, then we can blast it out.
Yep. This is the tweet link. So basically, whenever we have a stream, the StreamYard generates a live Twitter link, and that we can use that to share it with everyone else.
Cool.
But yeah, we are live, and then we have a proof of BD group. We can share it over there.
Love it.
Sweet.
Okay.
Where is it, by the way? Is it in the private chat you said, or in our Telegram chat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glenn, are you in New York or are you in San Francisco?
I'm in the New York office.
Okay, so we got enough. I think I've shared everywhere as well. If you guys wanna, go on, that's great too. But let's just get started. We got almost 250 people. So GBD everyone, this is Naruto. This time we are doing GBD because it's a proof of BD podcast this time, and we have some great people today. We got Glenn from Alchemy, we got Mike from Say, we got Graham, one of the best Omni BD I've seen, and then we have Will from Descent, co-founder. So great to have you guys here. I would love a quick introduction, going from Glenn to all the way to Will. What are you guys, doing at your current organization? What, how long you've been in Web3, anything like that, and then whatever, like the hard problems that you're trying to solve at your org, and then we can move in the, spicier takes of what BD does, what other things we do.
Sounds great.
Sweet. Oh yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. So I'm Glenn. I'm the SDR manager over at Alchemy. I've been in the crypto industry just personally 10 years. Only been working full-time in the space, coming up on 1 year at Alchemy though. So this was like a dream job for me, being able to combine like my prior kind of career path in BD as well as the Web3 kind of passion. Over at Alchemy, we're trying to basically solve all kinds of challenges for Web3 developers and be the go-to place for anyone to build and scale a Web3 dApp with a host of different developer solutions across a bunch of different chains. So really kind of a unique place to be able to solve a lot of challenges for devs.
Excellent. Hey, everyone. My name is Mike McCoy. I'm the Director of Infrastructure here at Say Foundation. Background on me, I've been in crypto. I've been working in crypto for about 8 or 9 years. I started mining investing in Bitcoin in 2015. I then also had my first professional stint working at Consensus in 2016. The kind of rest was history. I've worked at places like Consensus, Block Demon, Protocol Labs, even did the permission blockchain life at Accenture and led global blockchain strategy for a little bit. But here I focus mainly on business development with infrastructure partners, as well as like growing Say native teams and how we can be able to build them up within the network. At Say, we are trying to build the highest performing experience on the EVM. So you can get higher performing blockchains and other programming languages and other VMs. But if you want to be able to utilize the Ethereum developer tools, assets, smart contracts, etc., and you want to utilize them with Say speed within the Say network, you can be able to do that. And at the foundation, we help support from a number of ways, both with technical support, product support, go to market, and sometimes even funding. And happy to get into those topics later on.
So, what's up, guys? Name is Graham. Was previously at Say, so I was at Say for a better part of 2 years before joining Omni this January. At Omni, I handle all aspects of BD. At Omni, the TLDR is pretty simple. We allow dApp developers to access all Ethereum liquidity. So Omni has its own EVM equivalent. and been really getting down and dirty with a lot of exciting new projects in the space. Firm believer that the best products are those that are novel products built with novel tech. So if you're building something, hit me up. If you think you have a cool idea, let me know. But yeah, excited to get into the weeds here. Based in New York, and but originally from Chicago. So over to you, Will.
Hey, I'm Will, one of the co-founders here at Decent. I am the only person on the team not working on the product. So I handle BD, marketing, operations, anything on the sort of business and people side of things. I previously, actually, Mike, fun to learn that you used to work at Accenture. I was at Accenture for a sec right out of college. I also previously co-founded a nonprofit organization. Before this, we set up a logistic network to connect food banks to our farms with surplus food to food banks around the country. So in the last 4 years, we've rescued and transported over 250 million pounds of fresh produce and gotten that to over, I guess, 150 million people that need food. So that led me to crypto, obviously, as the next step, and now we're here. But yeah, excited to talk, BD, people, partnerships, all the like. So
Definitely, like this is one of the most stacked BD, podcasts that I'm like looking at right now. I don't think I've seen like a lot of those. And me and Graham, like we had a talk. I'm like, this is a good idea. So yeah, like now everyone's introduction is done. Everyone already knows me. I work as a senior developer at Avail. We do a lot of Avail. We are doing a lot of DA right now, and then we are moving to multiple different things. Basically, trying to unify Web3, all the rollups, trying to curb the user fragmentation, liquidity fragmentation, a lot of those things. Let's dive into like some questions here and there. What are the major metrics? And like we've discussed this in other groups as well. But what are the major metrics that you guys like look at whenever you're looking at the project success? I see a lot of like projects coming in the movement.
Did we lose him?
He said move once and then he canceled, but yeah, no, it's
Oh, did I lose? Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, so my major question, like what are the major project success? If someone is trying to start their project, what do you guys look at if you guys are pushing them into your ecosystem? Graham, do you want to go first with your spicy takes, and then we can move to Will, Mike, and Glenn, that kind of order?
Yeah, what do I look for? It's funny because like we've molded this around internally a lot, and I think if there's anything that anybody knows about ecosystem building is that it is quite hard to do it effectively and for the long term. And so I think what's challenging is like if you have a KPI of like, oh, I have to, I don't know, have meetings with X teams over Y time frame, and I have to like share an announcement about that, or I have like certain benchmarks that I have to hit. You're going to end up with, frankly, just like a lot of not great teams, not committed teams, that sort of thing, right? So I think our approach and sort of my barometer, honestly, for success on this side is would I actually invest in them myself? Do I have a conviction in what they're building? Do I think they have a unique product? Do I think their product has product market fit, right? And do I also believe in the founders and their vision, and are they in it for the long haul? Because if this isn't the case, then it's all a wash, in my opinion. So I would say you need to target. I mean, I guess the KPI in this situation would be like teams, but there needs to be the stipulation that I would actually like write a check and invest in them.
That's cool. Sorry, Naruto, did you want to say something?
No. I was gonna say go for it, Will. What do you think? I kind of like sometimes agree on what Graham says, and then sometimes like I have my own thought process. We'll talk more, but like go on, Will.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so I mean, maybe to level set, so Decent in what we do, we work to make it as easy as possible for both apps and the users using those apps to transact without having to worry about where their tokens are, where their liquidity is. So no matter what the chain is, you should be able to pay with whatever's in your wallet. So when we look at what is a positive growth for Decent and for our ecosystem, it's how are we building transaction volume, building growth of like conversion of transactions for these apps, and for ourselves, total metric that we look at is that transaction volume. In terms of the teams that we speak with, and so to give that as like the context of what we're looking for, I think there's sort of two sweet spots of companies that you can work with in this space, especially considering how fast it moves. There's admittedly less companies. Like if you go to DeFi Llama, if you go to Dap Radar, and you sort of dig around, I'm sure you'll be surprised. There's less companies that actually do significant transaction volume in a real way than you would think there are out there. And so some of the things that we've seen in terms of companies like ours that service either consumer applications or other companies that are all pretty nascent because this is an early space, is you have to, one way to grow is to find the right companies that are about to hit their inflection point, that are about to hit a spike of growth. Because even when they see, or when companies in the space see a lot of transaction volume, that can sometimes be, and a lot of times is, pretty short-lived. There's a very short attention span of people in the space. And so one example I think that's really good is you look at Privy, right? Like Privy is an awesome infrastructure provider, wallet provider for most consumer applications now. I think if you ask like who's your wallet provider, it would probably be Privy for these embedded wallets. And their inflection point was when Friendtech first launched, and they were then sort of anointed as the embedded wallet provider for this like consumer stack. And so I think there's again that sort of bifurcation of, you can look at companies that already have the metrics that you are after that you'd like to get into, and those are obviously incredibly valuable and really great partners. But I think a lot of it is also sort of to Graham's point, you need to find the companies that you have conviction in their growth and conviction in what they're going to be doing, and be able to work with them to help get to that inflection point, and then everybody wins.
Yeah, they're all good points and why you would invest. So I think there's two type of frameworks I look at. There's one for like me personally as an investor, and then there's two like what I would like to do with things in crypto, right, that I can't do in Web 2 today, right? Because most of the things I do digitally are in Web 2. Most of all my actions are in Web 2. And so when I come to Web 3, it's like and I've said this before, there's three things that really get you to do something. It's funding, features, and community. It's you make money by doing something or just by being somewhere. It's two, you have a feature that you can't do in Web 2, or it's either faster, better, cheaper, more efficient in Web 3 to do it. Or it's three, there's a community of people online that you enjoy more, you like to interact with, and that might be more global than your geographic region, and you could connect with them, and it's more fun to do it in that type of sense. And so if like I go for communities, one for the like what I can do, it's like, can I, like, and I mentioned this before in other group chats, but I'm a member of I've used Helium in the past before for like centralized Wi-Fi. I'm a member of Blackbird when it comes to having like a specific royalty or loyalty program in New York City for restaurants and for drinks. I've tried all type of things. Like I've ran decentralized storage because I was working at Protocol Labs and I was doing things for Filecoin, and I wanted to see if it was worth it. And at the time it was really complex for me, and I'd stopped doing it. I used to mine and run Bitcoin and Ethereum miners back in the day, and I don't do it anymore because it's very complex, and the money was great, but you pass on, you do other things. So but the metrics I do for an investment and as an investor are, I look at unique monthly addresses and consistent wallet addresses within a given month. I think you can look at days, but like one day is like a whole entire cycle. And if you have consistent activity and consistent metrics within a network and within a ecosystem, that is usually more promising and more beneficial. I also, it's really easy to go into networks when they're pre-TGE, before they're launching a token. It's very hard to see and project and understand who's going to make it for the long haul after they've launched that said token. But if someone's committed to adding more features, building what the market and what the community truly wants, and being able to pivot in areas and in times when maybe their North Star is not what the community truly needs. Those are the type of communities and the ecosystems and the groups that I tend to support or like to be a part of. There's also a lot of like grifters and a lot of products and services in crypto that tend to die due to whatever the next hot thing is or is no longer hot. But, that happens generally in all industries. So, and especially in startups and early stage, but those are some metrics.
Yeah, I really like Mike's answer there, like talking about actually using the products and kind of indexing a little bit on the more like the qualitative factors as well. It's definitely good to start with the qualitative stuff as a baseline. We actually went through this exercise at Alchemy a couple months ago where I was trying to figure out like the best way to do exactly this, right? Because we're compatible with so many chains, like there actually is like a really broad market. So we started out with things like TVL, unique active wallets, volume on like the different time frames. Then we looked at like what number of chains like do those projects like support or plan on integrating, and then we created like a weighted score based on that. And that's kind of what we used as a starting point, kind of like a weighted average, like combination of all those factors. But then once we identified like top projects on each chain, we would go through and look at the qualitative stuff, right? And that like, I'm curious if anyone here has found like a more automated solution to do this, but it really is, like Mike said, you have to like actually use the products, see what the onboarding experience is, see like, think about it like if you're new, a new user, like how hard is it? Do you have to like bridge like to this chain and do like all these manual things, like write down a seed phrase? Or like we brought up the example of FriendTech, is it like a nice embedded wallet kind of like onboarding experience? So those are some of the things I look for. And then I also index pretty heavily on like the community aspect of it. So like to give like Omni a shout out, like they partnered with a couple like different NFT projects, like leading up to kind of like their mainnet launch, some of which I'm a part of. So like I do index on things like that too when I see a project that's actually making meaningful inroads to Web3 communities.
Glenn, that last point you just made, I actually think is really important, and I think was something that I had written down in a question we'll get to later for sort of maybe Web 2 versus Web 3. But in general, I think everyone in crypto is so wary of grifting and of scams, and I think the strongest thing that you can have is a tie to another trusted party or a trusted community that can co-sign something, and I think that is definitely a big part of how things happen in this space.
On your point though, Glenn, real quick on like metrics, right? A lot of times you kind of have to create them on your own unless you're paying for a service. Like there are data analytic providers and stuff that do this as a service for a fee, right? But a lot of times I'm cheap and I don't want to pay that fee. So I do that on my own, or, sometimes company pays it and you get that type of insight. But if you don't have that type of insight, it's really hard. And I feel that most of my friends and like that are for the most part normal type of traders or people on the internet, they don't want to take the time to do this. And so the stubborn and the unfortunate that we are, can be both profitable, but it can also be a waste of time too. So there's like some type of balance where you don't want to get too deep into it. Otherwise you're just going to be maybe creating like more noise than creating more noise than there is alpha in those type of journeys.
Yeah, that's true. And also like you see like liquidity like flows really quickly, and like, a project might have like really high unique active wallets on like 1 month and then it like totally changes on the next. Like, to be frankly honest, that's a problem we ran into when we were doing this like manual exercise, is like we create this amazing index that's probably valid for like 30 days. And then it's like, how do you like
I don't know if you heard today, but the EVM's dead. So any projects on the EVM is just like, you should crucify it. It's just not going to survive.
Sir, I started the whole Web3 journey with EVM. I don't know what you guys are saying. I know me and Graham, we had a conversation on that, but okay, let's move on to something else, something interesting, because this is something that I definitely want to like talk about. And this is, what are your thoughts on foundation grants? Is it good? Is it bad? Because I saw, I think it was Moki whose tweet, and he was like, we don't do grants, and the whole thing. And then I saw Roshi's, I think, message on the group, and he's like, there's nothing good about grants. Nothing happens. It's a wrong move. What do you guys think? And then, I'll give you my take. I'll give you my take before you guys jump in. I think grants are important. they they are important because you need to meet operational cost. You have marketing cost. You have multiple services. When you're building a product, you have to pay multiple people, websites, and other stuff. So there it needs to have a lot of money for sure. But when you also give support, the founder support that people talk about, the mix of grants plus founder support, that's the major thing, I think. But the only thing is then you're restricted to that one ecosystem who gave you the grant, the one foundation. So you cannot like go into multiple ecosystem. So it has pros and cons. But I really think there is a need for grants. Otherwise, how like the indie devs or like the devs who are like probably somewhere in a third world country, who have good dev skills, but how are they going to build something? They're probably not good in the marketing. They're probably not well connected in the space. How are they going to build something? Go for it. Whoever wants to take the first
I'm
shot.
pretty passionate about it, so I may want to like take a first stab on it. But
Okay.
I do believe there's two categories you should fund. And also I don't believe in any exclusivity in any of these type of grants, right? If you're giving a grant with exclusivity, like it's open source software, anyone can build anywhere else. It's not going to be held in a court of law, and you're more so like prohibiting someone else from potentially like spreading their wings and going to another ecosystem that's going to be more beneficial to them. But I think you should really fund two different type of groups. It's your blue chips in crypto that have proven network effects of people that that already have a big following. So it's your Uniswaps, your OpenSeas, your you can even maybe count Eigenlayer in that category today, of like the ones that have a huge network effect and bring more people into your network. Then there's the other ones that are your native producers. So like say natives, for example, that want to be your original founders, want to start and build companies, specific verticals within your network and within your ecosystem that are very that can also be your like technical KOLs or your people that like carry the flag for you. Like Mert in Solana is a great example of someone who has like really carried that flag for Solana and it's like built that reputation. And we at the same network are absolutely looking for someone who wants to be that next type of Mert for in our network too. And those type of people are important for the growth of any type of ecosystem. And so you fund those two categories, but I also want to preference that anything in between is probably a waste of your time. They may just if they're only making money on grants, they're not going to make it. If they can't be able to raise their own fund, or they can't be able to raise and inspire and convince other people to want to be part of their mission, that's what venture capital dollars are for, is for those early stage, like your OpEx costs, your marketing costs, etc. And so that's when you want to be able to have that money go into that. So anything in between, I don't think is as useful of your time.
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this as well. And I guess Naruto, and I disagree with you. I think Mike, I kind of agree with you. I'd be curious to hear what Glenn and Will think. But I'm of the opinion that if you need a grant, you're not going to make it. Just period. Unless you're building some sort of infrastructure that impacts every team in an ecosystem, such as like a wallet, for example, right? Something that everybody touches. Otherwise, it's not really worth it. Now, what you should be asking for is for time. You should be asking for time with founders. You should be asking for, how do I raise money so I can keep the lights on? You should be asking for go-to-market strategy. How do I build a community? How do I do BD? How do I forge partnerships? How do I build an ambassador program, right? You need to be asking these types of questions, because I think part of this this tweet, or this, it was a back and forth with Smokey and Rushi, but time and connections and advice on this stuff is so much more valuable than just a small check, right? And I also think one thing that I've been kind of mulling around as well is that we like to, ecosystems, foundations like to point the fingers at the dApps for being mercenary, but I really think it's the foundation's fault, because the foundations have created this structure of giving out these grants to teams, and then the dApps are like, oh, this is a great idea. I can go here and deploy here and take money, and then I can go to the next one, and I can go to the next and next. And I honestly, as a dApp builder, it's quite lucrative, and I think it's a wise approach. But I'm tired of the foundation teams pointing the finger at the dApps, being like, you guys are the mercenaries. Like, no. Like, this is something that
I'm not pointing fingers at
foundations-
anybody. I'm just saying that, like, generally they're wasting time in between. There's no fingers.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
anyone has done wrong per se. And yeah, the incentives are misaligned in a sense. Like, if you give someone
I
too
agree.
much money to just sit on it, of course they're going to sit on and go to the beach. But if you give them like, you shouldn't be raising 10 to $20 million rounds originally, right? Anywhere between like 4 to 7 is probably the sweet spot when you're initially getting going. You have 3 to 4 members, unless if your project is very infra heavy or needs hardware or other things. Yeah, the check size does have to go up because there's a physical and an OpEx cost with that. But if you're doing just software, like 4 to 7 is probably kind of the sweet spot to start before you could then have some of examples of product market fit to then go farther.
So okay, so I would just say one thing, and I agree with Graham. Like, you need to have that time and the connections with the founders. Definitely needed. The problem is, number one, the founders themselves don't have enough time because they're running a big company, right? So they would love to talk to you, but not everyone. It's not scalable. You can come up with the best idea there is, but there are times when these same devs get ignored because I was in the same spot one time, right? The devs get ignored because they DM someone and the founder looks at it, but then he's busy. But then he replies after 3 days and he's like, let's hit it up, let's talk, and then he forgets about it altogether. So the idea is like it's not scalable enough. The whole thing of the founder support, it's very good. If one team makes it, that's a nice example, but it's just not scalable.
I think to that point that there's layers to it, right? Where it's like, I'm not going to, ping my founder and be like, hey man, I found the 50th Uniswap fork. Like, do you want to talk to them? Like,
For sure.
that's not worth his time, right? So if there's a team that I think is actually building something exciting and novel and they're going through the fundraising process, maybe they've already had a few conversations. Maybe they, built something in another ecosystem and they're hungry, to make it in another and figure it out and crack the code. And you can sense that on a call with them. Then I'll tee up the conversation, right? But I agree. If you're just feeding your founder like random projects, it's certainly not scalable. I agree.
Okay. Anyone else got any opinion, any takes, and then otherwise we move to something else?
I've definitely got some feelings on this because I think we see parallels with like Web 2, like startup accelerators and stuff like that. Like we saw a big kind of like boom and bust cycle with like accelerators, like Techstars and a few others kind of like started it, and then there was like a massive kind of rush to like create accelerators and incubators and stuff like that. And the people that were creating them kind of realized that there's actually a business model to be had in running an accelerator. And then it almost kind of over time, it became less about like helping the startups and more about just like trying to drive cash flow like through that and getting all the third party like partnerships and stuff. So I think we've seen this play out in Web 2 already. I have a little bit of perspective because when I was in college, I actually helped found one of the first startup incubators in like upstate New York in the capital region. So I kind of saw a little bit of like how that works behind the scenes. I also was working on a startup at the time that got a pretty small, but still like a foundation grant through that in Web 2, not Web 3. So I would say, like, as someone who was a broke college kid at the time, like it was really transformational. Like it enabled me to like get legal services, go travel to some events to like figure out like product market fit and do like customer interviews. Like I think we need to get back to like in Web3, like the foundations doing better due diligence. Personally, I have actually seen like a higher bar of that compared to definitely like the last bull cycle. I think in the last bull cycle, it almost felt like certain chains were just kind of giving out money to anyone, right? In like anyone who's like building a project just to try to incentivize that. Like now at Alchemy, we work with, most of the top chains and their foundations in terms of like sharing kind of like deal flow for foundation grants. And they've actually gotten pretty strict with it. Like I've sent over teams that like I thought kind of met my qualification bar, but they have a really high kind of standard for like founders and background and execution. So I guess like TLDR, like I think the foundations and grants are important. And from what I've seen, at least things are kind of moving in the right direction with focus on due diligence and quality.
One more point on just all that. Yes, like you should give your founders time, but to like maybe 3 to 5 teams that you believe would like are most valuable or of most importance to your network and to your community to build that thing out. right? It can't be 10 to 15. It has to be small pizza teams. And that's when you can be able to generate, it's more quality over quantity. And, I think some of the ecosystems in crypto past have launched and just had too many of these like verticals or other type of focuses. But the more you focus and into a specific realm, the more successful you will be.
Yep, I think I agree with the most points here. I think the last bull cycle was the one to be blamed for all these, foundational grants and stuff, because everyone was, getting 50K, 100K grants, maybe more than that. So definitely there are some issues. But okay, moving on to another good question there is airdrops. I wouldn't talk about anything about like Avail right now. Cannot talk, but we can discuss what other airdrops you think they're useful or not. What are the things that needs to be improved in the airdrop section? What are your thoughts over there? One thing I would tell you is that the airdrop, I think the meta is dead because the past few airdrops have not been the best. I was invested too much into Blast, and well, what do I do with like $1,000? Like that's what I got, and I'm like, I don't need it anymore, right? So I think the airdrop meta is dead. I don't know if it's useful or not, but yeah, give me some of your thoughts.
I'll just start and say like I think I was laughing a little bit because like Naruto like makes sense that maybe to you it's like, oh, $1,000, like what am I gonna do with that? But like so many people would take a free $1,000, a little stimmy check for I guess low value efforts. I think with airdrops, just what we've seen in the last few months here, I think there can be maybe, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think the fact that people are debating whether or not they're useful is kind of dumb, just because it's like you can look at the numbers and see like, oh, cool, like activity after this airdrop went down 90% or like 98%. It's like, was that useful? Sure. If you look at certain companies, it's like, yeah, maybe it was useful for them to raise. Maybe it was useful for them to do X, Y, and Z things beforehand. But if you want to look at it from like an objective metric perspective, is that going to be the best way to, build for the long term? I don't know. I think that the conversation about useful versus not useful is maybe like a little bit misguided in like what the actual argument or what the actual conversation should be around.
I would say I really like, and I'll take from another ecosystem that did an airdrop very well. I like what Layer Zero is doing with the Sybil resistance type of project there. I think one, you want to prove out that there are actual people taking these airdrops and doing something and having some type of utility with it. Excellent. I also like that they're making people being part of the community. So when you accept the airdrop within Layer Zero, you also have to give 3% to the protocol guild within that Layer Zero is creating, right? I think too many airdrops have just been like take the free money and then open source technology, do what you want to do with it, right? I think you have to be more intentional with it and have to bring some type of utility towards it. We at Say have had airdrops in the past, right? But yeah, probably in the past. And we've had some where you do bridging actions, you do specific actions, then come into our network and come into our community more, right? But I would hope in the future that, we do create and that, the community votes on these things and we can get it all sorted out, but that we can do more things that bring more utility. Like I can bring in and get airdropped more when I utilize the key benefits of like the high performance that Say brings into the ecosystem, right? I would like to see more examples of that rather than just giving free money. And that is probably more of the foundations themselves faults for airdrops not being as useful and them being more just farmable and people just coming in to make money. So
yeah, I think one thing actually, Nerdy, your point was really, really good at the top of this, where you're talking about how $1,000 didn't really move the needle for you. I think a lot of foundations, honestly, just don't fully understand their respective communities, because $1,000 for somebody else could mean that could be life changing, right, for them. And so I think when teams take part in airdrops in the future, I think it's just really, really important to understand the incentives behind those airdrops. Not only the incentives to like claim the airdrops, right? Because you're implying that you might not even actually claimed it or cared about it, but that is, you know, $1,000 that could have gone to somebody who it would actually move the needle for. And I think being very intentional about, obviously, you know, the communities that you target, the specific communities that you target, what will move the needle for them, right? If you're dropping to NFT communities, for example, making sure that it's like enough to make it worth it for them to claim it and then talk about it and then benefit from that, right? I think that's something that needs to be keenly understood. And I feel like teams have messed up on that in the past. But then also just like figuring out what behavior do you want to incentivize? I mean, Mike mentioned this as well, but like, I think understanding the intentions behind it, like the actions that you want to spur and incentivize. I don't want to call it laziness, but I think it's like too many teams don't get in the weeds of like what actually is the community, who comprises the community, because without that, it's like you're just blindly airdropping to people who might not care.
So my hot take on this is I wish that there were less airdrops, because I feel like we're so like saturated right now that the airdrops that we're getting are like very diluted. When I think
They're
back,
going to the same 5 people, and they're just then like doing
exactly.
whatever they want with it.
And it's not to say that like I don't think projects should do it. I just think, like, to the points that other people have been made, maybe it should be made at a later stage, like, of development. Like, when I look back to the airdrops that I personally received that were the most like impactful or drew the most like loyalty from me as a user, it was not the ones where I was farming points or knew about everything and like there was all these like public criteria of what I had to do. It was the ones where I just simply used a product in my like daily flow as like a Web3 user that was a really good product, and I got rewarded for that usage, right? So like Uniswap and ENS both come to mind.
Yep.
I wasn't expecting either of those, and like because of that, even though like there are other like dexes and other naming services and stuff, because like, you know, I was using those products and I liked them and they were good products, like I'll always stay loyal to those because of that kind of fact.
Yeah, I think that point that sort of everybody has made here about incentivizing the right behavior and also, you know, making it such that the incentivization is actually, um, you know, once the dust settles, what's left. The like to me, it seems clearer to incentivize like the building and the app behavior beforehand, or like as an ecosystem is starting, because like I mean we've seen with roll-ups, app chains, just like, you know, any of these new L2s and L3s popping up, the like number one sort of determinant of which ones have successful launches versus not successful launches is what can I do when I get there, and why would I bridge to this chain, or why would I go enter a new ecosystem. And it's sort of a double-edged sword of like, uh, you know, now there's all this available block space, or there's the ability to create your own block space and create a new ecosystem. But I think what we've seen is when you know, people are doing that just to do it, right? Like just to have a chain and to sort of lean into that narrative versus, oh, this is for a specific application to be able to scale. You know, there's a real use case here. If they've onboarded, you know, proper companies that you can go and be engaging with, it's night and day, you know, who ends up actually having users, having people that want to go there versus not. Because at the end of the day, it really is about ultimately just the apps, the app layer, and what you're actually doing, rather than you know, hopefully in the next, I don't know, optimistically a year or two, but maybe even a little bit longer, the idea of this chain versus that chain, or like really being sort of tribal and specific about where you are, will matter much less to the broader consumer base.
Yep. The final thing I would add is like I think there's so many airdrop farmers at this point which dilutes or hurts the whole ecosystem. So I basically tweeted one time, like, it's you don't have a community, you basically have an army of airdrop farmers, because the idea is like there are literal farms in China or like other places who are like, who have like 350 wallets, 1,000 wallets, and they just keep doing this. The best example, the funniest example I can give you is we have a unification cup at 8cc. It's a football tournament, and we open the application for players to like, sign in or like put in like their name and everything, register for it. I got at least 100 applications from airdrop farmers because they thought like, registering for this qualifies them for some token or whatever. This is the craziest thing. And that's why like I think like, there needs to be more filtering ways or something. What do you think? Like, how do you prevent grifters, or how do you like generate the good users by these creative campaigns? How do you prevent the grifters or airdrop farmers in the crypto?
I think one of the only ways to actually do it is to use something like WorldCoin. To be honest, there's no, and I have no affiliation, no connection to them whatsoever. But if you want to, what was that?
I said shout out Glenn, the big news from yesterday.
Yeah, shout out Glenn and World ID, was it? I don't know what it's called anyway, but like
World Chain, yeah.
World Chain, that was it. World Chain. But you do need a way to like prove personhood. And I've worked in like, especially in other jobs of like digital identity verification of like this and that, right? And unless you have some sort of biometric attached to it in a cryptographically safe way that isn't dependent on any one hardware or any one, you have to have proofs that could be either sharded or distributed across other like-minded partners. But you need a type of biometric to really prove that out. And especially if AI and all these other type of technologies become very advanced that will replicate people, cryptographic proof and cryptographic verifiability is the only way to really prove it, in my opinion. As freaky as people may think it is, and may be dystopian as possible, like it may have to unfortunately be our future.
Yep. Does anyone else have any thoughts to this, or do you want to move to another, question? Anything else? Cool. Then we'll move to next thing, which is, and this is, like one of those questions that I think I hinted a little bit earlier, is like you're building in one ecosystem. Let's say you're building in Say, or you're building in the movement, all kinds of moves. So how do you actually like scale from one to many? What's the best timeline you guys think of? I think like Frentech had this thing that they wanted to move away from base, or something happened and they just couldn't. So I remember Racer put a bounty out there. He's like, anyone who can figure out how to move away from base with the design and everything, I'm gonna give 200K. Something like this, So what do you think is a good timeline to actually go into multiple different ecosystems?
So I might have a different opinion to like a blockchain like Say, for example. But I think there's a difference between being able to accept payment from any chain or token versus going multi-chain and sort of deploying to multiple ecosystems. And I think the way that we look at it, any app, any consumer experience, or anybody trying to get users, like you shouldn't have to worry about where you're going to build on the basis of, oh, does this chain, or am I going to be fragmenting or cutting off my ability to bring in users from other ecosystems. And so from a perspective of Decent and our product in particular, our thesis is like you can build on Say or Base or any of these chains, but any user should be able to come, and the same way they would be able to select if they want to pay with their credit card or pay with another option, another bank option. They should be able to pay with whatever crypto they have across any of their wallets. And for applications, that just looks like adding adding a product like Decent or Omni or any of these others to this, such that the interoperability is incredibly easy. But it all still settles to like whatever that chain is that you're built upon. So I think you can have it both ways. And I think then that sort of changes the way you look at it, because you're not necessarily worried about the chain or the ecosystem because of the users that are there, but maybe rather like what is the technology doing to further your product.
I completely. Go ahead, Nuno. Sorry.
No, I was just saying Mike had a good take on this on LinkedIn, I thought, earlier this week.
Wait, I thought LinkedIn was a waste of time, right, Graham?
Boomers.
I'm
Glenn,
bullish
take?
LinkedIn.
I want to hear this take, please. Glenn, mention the take. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
No, the take was basically, and I think you and I were aligned on this, right? Is that like when teams are early on, like it's best to really double down on like one chain or ecosystem that you think is like best aligned for whatever your like success objectives are. And that doesn't mean you can't, go more multi-chain like down the road. I also agree with what Will said though, that like from the end user UX experience, like I do want to see like more projects kind of incorporate solutions like Decent and others. But then from like the core protocol level, probably makes sense to start out, double down on one chain, really be like a true partner, like with that chain foundation and ecosystem, scale that like to the point of like true user adoption. And then we can start thinking about like what actual problems are we solving by adding support for another chain rather than just chasing foundation grants, like going back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah, I would say two points on that. Number one, I agree with Will. I think Omni was founded on the basis that actually the team here was previously building Rift, which was an interest rate CDP protocol, and they were deployed on ETH mainnet and I believe Aurora back in the day, and ran into this conundrum of like, oh my goodness, there's all these different chains. Why do we have to think about all these different deployments, right? So that was sort of the impetus for Omni. But I think, and I also saw recently, I think it was yesterday, there was some tweet about Conduit, which congrats to our friends over there on their raise. But they have like, I think it was like 260 or so teams or roll-ups that are live in like testnet and mainnet, which is insane. So it shows that like there are more chains now than there have ever been. There's going to be more in the future, and that's sort of the bet that we're taking. But the answer to when you should go to another ecosystem is pretty short and sweet, in my opinion. It's like, if you're not getting the attention that you deserve, if you really believe in your product and believe in what you're building, and you're building something cool, you should be the darling of the ecosystem. And if you're not getting the attention you deserve, go somewhere else. It's a waste of your time.
100%. You shouldn't have exclusivity on it. And if you're the darling of that ecosystem, you keep just working in good faith that ecosystem, you then go multi-chain once you hit a certain growth metric or level, and everyone's metric is different. And you should know your entrance and exit criteria for each of those things. Like if you have a goal and you have a hypothesis that when you hit this type of number, whether it's financial, whether it's user, developer, etc., then go to that and try it out. But start small, then go big. But it depends also on your solution, right? Like if you're doing something that is multi-chain, you can have a multi-chain solution and launch multi-chain. I'm not saying it's not successful. I just believe that if you're doing specific things when it comes to product, when it comes to infra, DeFi, NFT, etc., then you'd be more successful.
Know your worth.
Know your worth, maybe. And hey, I also will say chain abstraction is a good thing. Like not knowing exactly, not having to know what exact chain you're interacting on is a very good thing. It gives a better user experience. I'm for that. But I also do believe that, when you're in the early stages, it's probably best to focus on one.
I think it's more like you want to know who supports you in the start of the days, and if that community, works out for you or not. I think I've heard that like the founder of Pump.1, he said like he just want to stay in Solana. He doesn't want to move somewhere else. I do not remember who said it, but there were conversations going on, and I might be wrong, but that might be his strategy. I still believe like multiple chains or multiple ecosystem is a good idea. But it just depends on the timing. So we'll no comments further than that. I see some eyebrows, people were like, what are you talking about? So yeah. Anyway, and this is because we have only 8 minutes left. So final question to you guys. And this is because, there are a lot of people listening to you. I think we have close to 3,500, which is I think a good number. And a lot of these people will also be like BD people, young BD people who are looking for new jobs. So what do what are some things you would suggest for these people who want to dive into BD roles? What they can implement, how they can get a job, when they're learning more, or like they're young, what should they do in their current organization? What are your thoughts? Let's just say, take me as an example. What do you think? What should I do?
I guess I have some thoughts on this, and I'll round it out with the story of how I hired my most recent BD guy on the team. But it's dive into crypto Twitter. I know it's like a disgusting landscape at times and exhausting, but you got to do that. You got to educate yourself. And then I would also say mess around with products. Like I think one of the biggest issues on the BD side is that people think we don't understand how stuff works. We might not be the most technical, and sometimes we don't. But I will say, like, mess around, like trade stuff, like have fun, right? And I think like understand why people are in the space. And then also, you obviously be super hungry if you're interested in getting in the space. Network, hit up people, shoot DMs. So we just hired a new BD guy here, and I actually found him on Twitter. He was constantly in the replies of two folks who are, well, Ansem was one of them, and this other guy, Jason Choi, who I actually really look up to, who's an investor in Say, actually. He's over at Tangent Ventures and had his own podcast, or did the Block Crunch podcast, which was great. But I just noticed that this guy was constantly DMing. I was like, "Hey, do you need an intern? Do you need an intern?" And I ended up hitting him up. I was like, "Dude, I like this. This is good. Like, what are you doing?" And turns out he was like wrapping up college. And we brought him on board part-time, and now he's full-time in New York. So I think just like, don't be afraid to send the tweet, send the DM, and just like dive in headfirst into the space. It's a fun one.
I'm fairly passionate about this because before coming to crypto, I talked about sports on TV for ABC in Central Texas. So, I had a very different background than anyone from finance or computer science, any technology things, right? The only way I learned was I used to go to like very technical meetups in New York City, Philadelphia, DC, etc. And I would bring my laptop, and any term I didn't recognize, I would then write that term down. I would then either Google it there or Google it later, learn about it, go on a Stack Overflow thread, go on a Reddit thread, learn all about it. And then eventually I built up enough knowledge where I could actually like program smart contracts, code and Solidity, do other things, right? And that's what got me into the space, right? But I am a people person, and I use my people skills to be able to do this and manage relationships and get them into crypto and do all these things. But it was a slog to be able to learn all these things of like without a computer science background, but it is worth it. Anyone can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And so, yeah, you just have to put the time in, and like time is quality, and as in everything.
Yeah, I can go. So a few things like stand out to me. One is like you're in Web3, like it's a permissionless ecosystem. Actually use the products, right? That's like the best way to learn. I'm a hiring manager here at Alchemy. I interview a lot of people who where I'm like, what's your interest in Web3? And they are like, I bought some coins on Coinbase or whatever. And that's not like necessarily like a disqualification or whatever, but like it is nice to see people that have like explored stuff on chain. Like even if you don't have like a really solid resume working in Web3, like I didn't before I got this job. This is my first full-time Web3 job, but I did things like I minted my resume on chain and I airdropped it to like hiring managers. While I was still at my last company, Graham, I don't know if you remember this, but I like added Graham on LinkedIn and I was like, hey, I noticed you're like working in BD at Say, and like this is like a career path that I want to go on. Can I like pick your brain? And he was kind enough to give me like 30 minutes. And I like view that as being like really helpful, actually, like guiding me towards like being successful in my career search. So, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, be proactive. You can also I know we were joking about LinkedIn being for boomers, but this worked for me also. Like in my about section in LinkedIn at the very end, I just put like also passionate about Web3, blockchain, crypto, like stuff like that. And then I came up in all the searches like from the recruiters, even though I didn't necessarily have it on my prior experience.
Okay, I think one last thing, I would just say this is the real proof of BD. Graham helping Glenn out of nowhere. I used to do this thing when I was not like working at anywhere back in I think 2021. And I'm like, how do I become a great dev. And I would I remember just DMing a couple of protocol engineers. So definitely good thing, Graham. Yeah, final points. If anyone else, you guys have something to say.
Yeah, I have one thing to say on that point too is so I had somebody do that for me too. And it was a team. I don't know if you know the folks over at Bridge Split. They're building like real world assets on Solana. This was probably like 3 years ago now. But I was in a similar boat. I was in Web 2. I was trying to figure out how to get into Web 3, and I just was like emailing people my resume. I was like, I honestly it wasn't being as sophisticated as Glenn was with the resume airdrops and the the putting blockchain in the LinkedIn bio. But they were the first team. The founder there, Mary, was the first person to respond to me, and we ended up having a great conversation. Ended up meeting a bunch of people like through her and her co-founder. So yeah, there's a chain of events there. And the reminder for me is whenever somebody asks, it's just, of course, I'll give you some time, pay it forward. Super, super important.
That's good. That's good. Cool. So definitely great points here. If you guys have some final remarks, everyone has to jump off to other calls. So I won't take much time. If someone has final, ideas, you want to say something, go for it. And then we'll just end the live stream there.
Yeah. I think one learning that I've had over the last couple of years is it's kind of intimidating. I think a lot crypto in particular, like everything is very digital and you're DMing people on Twitter. A lot of people don't have even their faces up. It's sort of like, oh my God, like I'm sending messages just to these random people. Like, am I going to be, I don't know. It's sort of like a black box. But everybody's really nice. Or at least either you're not going to get a response, or you'll get like a generally positive response. So I think just being proactive, being good to everybody. I actually and then the last point is if you're going to be good at BD, it's about finding how you can be valuable to other people, not about how they can be valuable to you. I think is the best thing. So those would be my two pieces of advice: proactivity, and then being able to find value that you can drive to others. It's always going to come back to you.
Yep, I think that's a great point. Who's going next? Mike, you wanna go?
I just have 4 words: say less, do more. Build on our ecosystem, and you'll be great. No, paying it forward is the main thing that has made me successful. At least is being able to see what other people truly need as a value add, and I have decent amounts of different skill sets and can help in this different state when they're in different stages and how they need a value add. And that is the only way to really be successful in business development, especially. So the more you can help others, the more you can help yourself.
Mine is nobody knows anything. And if they do, they're probably lying. So I think everybody has some degree of imposter syndrome. It's natural. I had it, still have it. I think, just trust your gut. That's my best piece of advice.
Yep, definitely. Glenn, go for it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks so much for having us all. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do it again soon. I guess the only thing I would say is in the spirit of paying it forward, if anyone is looking to work in Web3, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter. My handle is up here on the screen. Happy to chat with anybody or answer any questions.
Likewise.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. I think really nice conversation, and definitely loved it. I think we should do it again sometime soon. But yeah, thanks a lot again. Mike, you want to say something?
There's so many more.
Thanks everyone. Yeah.
Go through.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you guys
Later.